It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio.
Yes, hello and welcome to RealAg Radio here on this Tuesday, July 18th. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, and I am super excited to share with you that today's show is brought to you by Corteva and Corteva's Viatude fungicide. So stick around. Later in the show, we're going to have Lorelei Yeboah is going to join me to talk about Viatude fungicide and what it means for your canola crop. And hey, you know what's happening this week? Ag in Motion is happening out in Saskatoon, or near Saskatoon, I should say. So you can check out Corteva's booth at Ag in Motion and say hello, of course, to the team there, including Lorelei. So if you are there, tell her you heard her on the radio and say hello from us. Sean is there as well today, although Tuesdays are my show, as per usual, but he is on the road today. So if anyone sees him, please make sure to say hello. All right, we've got a great show lined up for you today. We're going to delve into some policy changes. We are going to talk nitrogen loss. We're also going to hear Lyndsey tackle the news. And I'll be honest, if you listen to the show on a regular basis, I don't do so bad on the panel, I think, if I'm honest, but pure broadcasting news is not my forte, but I'm going to try my best. So thank you, everyone, for the encouragement. As always, of course, when we get to that news segment, if you've got any questions or any questions on other segments today, maybe some feedback, maybe ideas for a guest or a topic, you can, of course, reach out and call that RealAg listener line, 1-855-776-6147. Or you can find us across social media at RealAgriculture. You can drop us a DM there. Use the hashtag RealAg Radio. It makes it a lot easier to find your messages if you're just going to tweet us or maybe join Threads. I have not joined Threads yet. Can somebody tell me if it's worth it? I feel like it probably is. And I was just on holidays the week it came out, and I'm a little behind the eight ball. That's all. Let me know what you think. Okay, so as mentioned on today's show, we've got a great lineup. So yes, Lorelei Yeboah is joining me, but also Colin Elgie. He's the soil fertility specialist with OMAFRA. He's going to hop on the show. We do apologize for the fact that we're going to talk about wet conditions. I know, seems kind of bizarre given the year that Western Canada and the U.S. is having in many areas. But Ontario, yes, has been hot, but we have been hot and wet. We've had a lot of major storms roll through, huge dumps of rain, 3, 4, 5 inches overnight in some places. We've had just where I am here, west of Ottawa, we've just had rain almost every day. Rain, mist, drizzle, downpours. We're trying to make hay, and it's really annoying. But also we recognize that we have an abundance, and honestly, if we could share, we would. But it does create some challenges. And so Colin is going to join me. I've got some questions about estimating nitrogen loss, especially for this corn crop. We are approaching tasseling, if not already started in some areas, and this is a critical period for the wheat crop, of course. For the corn crop, of course. Goodness, Peter Johnson's getting in my brain there a little bit. Also on today's show, Brett Halstead with SaskWheat. So he's chair of SaskWheat Farms out at Nokomis. Brett is going to join me on the show to talk about some impending changes August 1. So August 1, of course, starts the new crop year, and it is often where we see when the Grain Commission, the Canadian Grain Commission, brings in new changes for grading standards, those sorts of things. It usually starts with the crop year beginning. And there are particular changes that will be implemented in just a few weeks' time that SaskWheat and APAS out of Saskatchewan are not super keen on and want them paused until there is a thorough economic review. And this all has to do with harmonizing the standards on test weight between primary elevators and the export market. So Brett will be joining me right after the break here to talk about that. All right. As mentioned, of course, let us know any feedback on the show. Would love to hear from you. And big thank you to our show sponsor, Corteva Viatude fungicide. Stick around for our segment 3. You'll hear from Lorelei and hear all about this fungicide product. All right, without further ado, let's get to a break, and I'll be back with Brett Halstead right after this. Infuse some energy into your next corporate event, customer meeting, or conference with RealAg Radio, Canada's national agriculture radio show. Create a unique experience at your next event with host Sean Haney, broadcasting RealAg Radio live on SiriusXM, featuring exciting guests, captivating interviews, and the latest news from the agriculture community. Contact advertising at realagriculture.com or call 587-787-1795 to book your on location with RealAg Radio today. I am your host today, Lyndsey Smith, and now we have a product spotlight. I've got with me Michelle Gemmell. She's the National Market Sense Leader with Cargill. Okay, tell me about Market Sense. What is this product?
Yeah, so Market Sense is a subscription-based service that we offer from Cargill. It's really focused on helping our farm clients make confident green marketing decisions. It involves a team of advisors who come to your farm. We would then provide market insights and strategies throughout the year to help you manage risk and maximize opportunity. What we've found, too, is over the last 2 decades, we have a proven formula for success that matches the farmer's unique individual situation with our marketing insights and our portfolio of specialized grain contracts.
So for those who might be interested in Cargill's Market Sense program, where can they go?
cargillag.ca/marketsense, or you can visit one of our locations nearby to you and ask to speak to one of our advisors.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio. I am your host on this Tuesday, Lyndsey Smith, and today's show is brought to you by Corteva Viatude fungicide. So big thanks to Corteva. Joining me now on the line is Brett Halstead. He's the chair of SaskWheat and Farms near Nokomis. Brett, we've got the new crop year starting up August 1, and there are anticipated changes happening at the Canadian Grain Commission that SaskWheat is not supportive of. Fill in the background for us here.
Yeah, basically in early June, the Grain Commission announced that they would be moving from two standards to one, from a primary and an export standard to the more rigid export one, which is going to move number one wheat from 60.1 pounds per bushel to 63.3. And the changes in those test weight standards could actually make what was a number one red now a feed wheat. And SaskWheat has asked for an economic analysis on this, and the Western Standards Committee, which SaskWheat's a part of, moved in April to hold off on any changes until an economic analysis was done. But the Grain Commission went ahead and made these changes effective August 1st anyhow. So we're disappointed with that. We don't know what it could mean as far as potential losses to farmers. We've never lost a shipment due to test weights, export-wise, so we're not sure what kind of standard we need to meet worldwide when we're getting there anyhow. But what could happen is specific areas could have low test weight, and the elevators in that area would have no ability to blend, but the elevator companies could then blend at port, and it basically is going to be a transfer of income from farmers to grain companies.
So this blending already happens, though, right? I mean, it's quite common for grain companies to essentially put together what their end customers is looking for based on what they have, and they have the ability to blend. That already happens.
Yeah, absolutely. They have that ability to blend at port. They have the ability to clean, to improve weight. Farmers don't have that ability. The old standards have worked in the past. As I mentioned, Canada has never lost a shipment to test weights. So I think it's just going to transfer income from farmers to the grain companies.
So it sounds to me like that was a pretty tight timeline as far as sort of this proposal to implementation. Was there a consultation process that SaskWheat or that you know of or were involved in?
It's been discussed at the Western Standards Committee. I'm not sure for how long, maybe the last couple meetings, and then it come to a vote at the April meeting, and part of that vote was to hold off until an economic analysis was done. But the Grain Commission ignored the wishes of the Standards Committee and decided to move ahead anyhow. The Grain Commission is in existence to work on farmers' behalf and in farmers' best interests. And we don't think this is an issue where the Grain Commission is actually living up to its mandate of working in farmers' best interests.
Now, so one of the things that I'm hearing as well is that we're missing key pieces of information to be able to even quantify what this might mean. Do we, on average, has test weight been an issue, or do we even know that? Do we have sort of, by area, do we have averages? Do we know what a change in test weight might actually equate to, actually at the elevator?
Yeah, that's some of what the economic analysis could provide. The Grain Commission does have information from harvest sample surveys. They say it wouldn't be much of a change, but the issue is going to become, again, if one area in a specific year has low test weights and the rest of the prairies has good test weights, in the past, that was easily blended at port. That will be very difficult to do now because those individual elevators might not have high test weight to blend with medium to lower test weight. And it's quite a drop if you end up going from number one to a feed on 3 pounds per bushel of a test weight.
Now, so SaskWheat, and I should mention the Agriculture Producers Association of Saskatchewan, APAS, has also, you've put out a joint release to ask that this be, are you asking that this be halted for the August 1? Is that the ask, that you'd like more time before this is implemented?
Yeah, have the decision to implement it August 1st reversed, complete the economic study, and then have the whole industry come back to it over the winter or at the next Western Standards meeting, and then review the information. We think it was made in too much haste. Farmers weren't a real part of this decision. Grain companies and farm commissions knew a little bit about it, but then all of a sudden it happened real quick.
And here we are, we are only a few weeks away from the new crop year, so this is quite a quick turnaround then.
Yeah, this needs to be done very soon.
Okay. All right, Brett, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us safely from the road. We do appreciate it and appreciate your time today on this topic.
Thanks, Lyndsey. Thanks for having me.
All right, and we'll be back with more RealAg Radio, brought to you by Corteva Viatude fungicide, right after this.
Advanced canola trait technology is here. And it's soon to be the talk of the town. Optimum Glide delivers excellent yield potential and agronomic trait performance. Improved crop safety. Enhanced weed control. And a wider window of application. You're going to want to see this. Learn more at OptimumGlide.ca.
As you head out into the field this season, the Corn School's got you covered. Everything from tillage discussions, weed control info, field trial results, yield strategies, and more. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com has the information and advice you need to help you succeed. Brought to you by Pride Seeds and BASF. Corn School episodes are available at cornschool.com, from RealAgriculture.com, or as a podcast from your favorite streaming service. Download the latest episode today.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin, host of the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com. Throughout the year on the Soybean School, we'll bring you timely agronomic video content from planting to harvest, from the latest agronomic research to the latest in production technology. Check out our massive video library on YouTube, RealAgriculture.com, or download the audio podcast versions wherever you get your podcasts. The Soybean School is brought to you by Pride Seeds, BASF, and Syngenta Canada.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, and it is time for today's Product Spotlight. And joining me now is Lorelei Yeboah. She's with Corteva. She's a portfolio marketing manager for fungicides across Canada. Welcome here, Lorelei.
Well, thanks, Lyndsey. Happy to be here.
All right. So we are here to talk about Viatude. What is Viatude and how does it work?
I'm excited to talk about it, and I'm glad you asked. Viatude is our brand new canola fungicide for Corteva. It has Onmira active, and that provides a premium sclerotinia protection in canola crops. So a little bit about it is that the secret to Viatude is its premium performance. It really does deliver through a unique combination. No one else on the marketplace offers the combination of these two strongest sclerotinia actives, and that delivers multiple modes of action in that good pre-mixed formulation, so it's easy to use. And in addition to protecting, pairing those strong multiple effective modes of action also provides that preventative resistance management for farmers and their disease management plans. A couple little points about Viatude to note that make it unique and kind of special is its movement properties. So Viatude has both protectant and systemic movement within and without a canola plant. And so we know canola has a dense crop canopy, so you really do need that movement ability within the crop canopy and within the plant itself for that critical maximum protection. Viatude rapidly absorbs into plants, and it does it through several different ways, so that makes it more resistant to wash off and adapts to variable weather conditions because it has so many ways that it's absorbing into the plant. So with stem and leaf protection, it would have a wax surface diffusion and local gas activity that hangs out in that canopy for full outer coverage. And then xylem systemic activity, which sounds sciencey, but really it's that deep inner protection. So even when you think about that, you're thinking about the unsprayed parts of the plant that are even getting protected. So it's not just where you get sprayed, it's a full protecting product.
Right, and xylem, I always think about this. Xylem moves up the plant, phloem moves down the plant. So we're talking about movement within the plant, right? Using that interior
within
highway. That's right. Okay, I like it.
Exactly.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, now Viatude, of course, is new. This is the first year it's been on the market. What has the feedback been so far for now? And tell me about the plans for 2024.
Yeah, good question. So we were pumped because we knew that the results were already showing in our field trials leading up to this year. And now it's just like, yeah, hit the nail on the head. Guys are saying it has great usability. It's performing to the expectations, if not above. And there has been zero issues. So it's just one of those easy bait products that you get it out there and everybody loves it. And it's being used. And our plans are to ramp up use and have it even more available in 2024. So we're going to make sure that there is more product and more people can enjoy the benefits. I mean, when we looked at our trials, over 11 field trials, we saw that against market standards, Viatude had the least recorded disease incidence and the highest yield gains over competition. So now we're putting our money where our mouth is, and guys are actually seeing those benefits in the field. So nothing but positive feedback so far.
Can you talk a little bit about the value that Viatude brings to Canadian farmers?
Absolutely. Well, we know sclerotinia infection can decrease crop yield at an alarming rate. So protecting your canola can significantly increase your yield advantage. In our trials, Viatude outperformed competitive products and delivered an additional 7.7 bushels per acre over untreated canola, which is a huge benefit to a farmer. Plus, Viatude is part of the Flex Plus Rewards program that Corteva offers to customers, so they can receive up to 18% savings, making it a more affordable protection investment. So all in all, the protection, yield advantage, and additional savings make Viatude an important resource and a great return on investment.
Mm-hmm. All right. So if someone wants more information on Viatude for the year ahead and planning ahead for 2024, where should they go? Where can they find information?
Oh, definitely reach out to their local territory manager, or you can visit our website, corteva.ca. Plus, our team is also going to be at Ag in Motion, and you can come visit the Corteva booth. I'm going to pop in and be there. It's number 520 on 5th Street, I believe, at the show. We'd love to have a quick visit.
All right, and wear your sunscreen, drink lots of water. It's going to be hot out there.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Lorelei, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
All right, we'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
Whether you're seeding, harvesting, or anything in between, the Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com has you covered. Timely agronomic information from industry experts available online anytime. Give your wheat crop a good start and a great finish with the Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com. Brought to you by C&M Seeds, Syngenta Canada, and the Alberta Wheat and Barley Commission.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio on this Tuesday. Today's show, of course, brought to you by Corteva Viatude fungicide. Great time of year to be thinking fungicide, of course, on canola. So big thanks to Corteva for sponsoring today's show. We're going to switch gears a little bit from the fungicide talk, though, and head on into nutrient management. Joining me now is Colin Elgie, like the letters, LG, soil fertility specialist with OMAFRA. Welcome here, Colin.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Lyndsey.
All right. So with apologies to much of Western Canada, Ontario has had a bit of a turn to the wet. Tell me just how wet things have got.
Well, it's pretty variable, and depending which rain cloud you're under at which point in the province, we went from, I'd say, quite dry, not extreme dry like the West seas, but quite dry for Ontario through the month of May and into June, and since then the tap hasn't really turned off for too long. So there's spots that are actually nicely moist and not too bad. I think everyone's got a bit too much rain this last little bit, but there's other spots that are pretty localized that have standing water in fields and some flooding occurring and some pretty extreme rainfall in the tune of 4 to 5 inches overnight, that kind of thing. So there's some pretty wet spots throughout the province.
So that, of course, a few things come to mind. Roots not having oxygen, and these are things when we're talking ponding, standing water, etc. But also, and we have to think about our nitrogen and nitrogen availability and nitrogen loss. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So how concerned? I think mostly we're focused on corn here, but I do have a few questions about soybeans. But for our corn crop, what are the ways we could be losing N, and how likely are each of them in this scenario?
Yeah, so like you say, corn's the big one because that's the crop we put the most nitrogen on and the most at risk. So when we talk about losses, specifically from heavy rains and wet soil conditions, there's really three main ways that loss happens. So the first would be runoff, and so that's physical movement of that nitrogen fertilizer, generally occurring if we've got a very heavy rainfall in a short amount of time. If there's soil moving off the field, chances are there's a bit of nitrogen that's bound to that soil that's moving with it. Any organic matter, anything like that, also moves a bit of nitrogen with it. So that's the kind of the one that we can really see the most is when we've got some heavy erosion and that soil movement. The next would be leaching. And so when we talk about leaching, what we're talking about is the net downward movement of water through the soil profile. And really, when we're talking about nitrogen, it's important that we recognize just how tied to that water nitrogen is. It really gets into the plant through water, which is a good thing. Otherwise, we'd have some nitrogen sitting in the soil that we wouldn't be able to use. But that does put it at risk of moving through that soil profile. And so in a light, coarse textured soil, real sandy soil, we know that water moves through that soil profile a lot faster than it does through a loam or a clay soil. And so the key to recognize nitrogen losses through leaching is that even if we get a huge rainfall event, there's still only a maximum amount of water that can actually infiltrate into the soil. And so I think in a lot of cases, the amount of nitrogen we lose from leaching is often overestimated just because we get a huge rainfall and we've got wet soils and we think that nitrogen's dropping right out the bottom. But really, if we've got dry soils to begin with, unless you see that tile gushing a lot of water out, there's a lot of room for nitrogen to sit in that soil still. So leaching is a concern for sure, but in general, I don't think it's as big a loss through the growing season as we might think. The final major source of loss for nitrogen wet soils is through denitrification. And I think this is maybe one where we've got some potential for larger losses, especially with a prolonged wet period. So denitrification is essentially the conversion of nitrate that's in the soil to gases, nitrogen gases such as nitrogen gas itself, N2 gas, or nitrous oxide. And nitrous oxide is important because it's a potent greenhouse gas, and that's one that we're really worried about in our agricultural systems.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say. So, just quickly, that the nitrogen exactly that can be lost as N2 gas, so just nitrogen gas, or that nitrous oxide, which is the one, as you mentioned, that is a greenhouse gas. That's the one we're concerned about environmentally. But that denitrification potentially could be also to the crop and to our pocketbooks a big issue in saturated conditions. So I'm sorry to interrupt you now. So how does denitrification happen?
Yeah, so it's basically microbes in anaerobic conditions. So anytime there's a lack of oxygen in that soil, they convert that nitrate nitrogen to those gases, and it percolates up through and is lost to the atmosphere. So anytime we've got really wet soils, even if they're not ponded, or especially where they are ponded, that kind of creates that perfect condition for those microbes to get at that nitrate and change it off to a gas. So really, the longer those soils stay saturated, the larger the potential loss from denitrification. And it's temperature dependent. So with warm soil temperatures, we lose quite a bit more. But throughout the season that we're at now, in a lot of cases, we could be losing 4 to 5% of that nitrogen per day.
Wow.
If that soil stays saturated. So
Right, because
there is
it is warm.
Some pretty big potential.
It is, and I use warm loosely, y'all. It's been hot. So, so soils are warm. So this is where, because we talk about nitrogen loss earlier in the season, and this is where, when soils are cool and wet, we're not as worried about denitrification losses because it's the microbes that are going to be slower, let's say. Our microbial activity is slower when it's cool, but right now it's warm. So we also are just about, and I'm guessing that there may be some tassels poking through in your area, not quite yet up here, but we are approaching this very critical period. So if farmers are concerned that, they've had significant ponding or wet conditions, what can you do if you're concerned that you're losing or have lost a lot of N? We're approaching a pretty critical stage of the corn crop here.
Yeah, well, and you bring up a perfect point because timing is important. So if we think about nitrogen losses, early in season, we've got all our nitrogen applied. So whether we're putting it up front or, our regular side dress timing, we've got a lot of nitrogen available to be lost. If we get closer to tassel timing, if you look at the uptake charts, we're somewhere around 60% of that nitrogen's already in the plant by that time. Mm-hmm. So really what that means is there's only 40% of that total nitrogen that's even available to be lost, assuming we didn't have other losses throughout the season. So it might be something like 35% that's got potential to be lost. So if we look at, say you applied 200 pounds of nitrogen per acre at planting, we're figuring, we've got about 35% of that still in the field. If we're saturated soil for, say 2 days, we might have 7-8 pounds of nitrogen that's lost through denitrification. So in that case, you're probably not far off of a regular season anyways, likely not worth going back in. If it's earlier than that, so, say you're still at V12 or V14, something like that, where there's a bit less nitrogen that's already been taken up and you've got saturated soils for a long time, say a week and a half, something like that, you might be in the realm of losses somewhere around 40-50 pounds of nitrogen. And in that case, you'd probably want to get in there as soon as possible and top that up right before that critical pollination stage.
Mm-hmm. Is there a way to know? So this is, of course, the key here is, as you've outlined it, right? You can do some figuring as far as what you put on, time of season, where the crop is at. Is there a test? Can you do a test? Like, would the nitrate test be helpful right now? Or say in a day or two if things dry up?
It'd be helpful to a certain point, basically identifying if you can, take a nitrate sample from a good area and a wet area to compare them. Unfortunately, we don't really have a whole lot of data on nitrate sampling at this time of year. Mm-hmm. And so it'd be tough to make a good recommendation just from that nitrate sample alone. Mm-hmm. It's just one of those situations where, we're doing this so seldomly that we don't have a whole lot of background data to support a good recommendation from it.
Okay. So for comparison, if you're the curious type, get out there and let us know. Because we appreciate learning from each other as well. Last question, maybe. Sometimes I lie and I come up with new ones. But nitrogen or denitrification inhibitors. So if I used a denitrification inhibitor when I put on my top dress, is it still working for me at this point? Or how did that work? Or what did it do its job already and what's theirs there?
Yeah, and so I think, again, you kind of hit on the timing aspect. So if you're putting it on with a top dress application, the nitrogen stabilizers, the nitrification inhibitors, they last somewhere in the realm of 2 to 5 weeks. From some of the data I've heard, I think there's some products that maybe last a little bit longer than others. And so if you put that nitrification inhibitor on with a side dress or top dress application, you've likely still got a bit of protection from that denitrification, from those losses. If you put everything on up front at planting and put the nitrogen stabilizers with it, it's likely run out of a lot of steam, so you might have a bit more protection, but with it being planted 2 months ago, it's tough to say you've got 100% protection against those losses.
Alrighty. I wish we could share, everyone. So just putting it out there for our friends in the South and our friends in the West. We are trying to make
Wouldn't that be nice?
Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't it be great if we could? And so I do apologize, but we are dealing with the hand we are dealt, and this is what we are dealing with here in Ontario. All right, Colin, thank you so much for this. This was incredibly informative and super interesting. Thanks so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Lyndsey.
Alrighty, we will be back with more RealAg Radio, brought to you by Corteva Viatude fungicide, right after this.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
Canola is more than just a pretty face in the prairie landscape. It's a big business, both here and around the world, that requires you to be informed and up to date on everything it takes to grow a successful crop. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com has an expert library of video resources covering markets, agronomy, and more to help you grow a healthy and profitable canola crop. Visit canolaschool.com today. Brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
Welcome back to Real Ag Radio on this Tuesday, July 18th. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, and big thanks to Corteva and Corteva's Viatude fungicide for being today's show sponsor. We very much appreciate the support. All right, everyone, buckle up. We're in for a news segment, and there is so much to cover. And I'm going to start out with sharing a little story. So this morning, I had coffee with some wonderful friends of ours. You might have heard Steve Terpstra on the Farmer Rapid Fire. He was through the valley, stopped in, so we're having coffee this morning, and our discussion turns to Zero Inbox. Have you ever heard of Project Zero Inbox? So there are these people who actually keep their unread messages in their email inbox at zero. So every day they have a routine, they have their settings so that things get put to the right folders, etc. And little note, we actually have a member of the RealAg team that does this. I'll let you try and guess who it is. You probably won't get it. It's not me, I'll tell you that. So this is why we're having this discussion. But I explained that the idea of a zero inbox for me is I just don't know if it's possible, if only because of the tsunami of information that passes over our desk in a day that shows up in my email. So I'm going to capture some of what has happened just in the past few days and just relate that these are the things that, as I was even recording the show, the earlier segments, the email and the news popping in, it's constant. And so, yes, I understand that there are people that are much better than me at organizing their email inbox. And if someone could help me, I would really appreciate it because it's totally a mess. Anyway, I'm going to do my best here to cover as many things as possible, but there are so many things happening either globally or right here at home. And some of them are definitely things that you're probably going to want to act on. The first one, I will note, is if you farm in Saskatchewan and you have canola, which I would say that is a lot of you, you do qualify potentially for free disease testing offered by SaskCanola in conjunction with the Ministry of Agriculture in the province. So they've added a disease this year. So there was always testing for clubroot and blackleg if you joined the program, and you can head on over to SaskCanola to find out all the details on how to do that. But new for this year is they've added testing for verticillium stripe. And if you haven't heard about verticillium stripe and you grow canola in Western Canada, I think you might want to head on over to Canola School, to be honest, and go check it out. We've done a couple videos on it. It is a new disease to canola, and Manitoba, for sure, last year ended up having some pretty significant yield losses from verticillium stripe. So it can look like a blackleg infection late in the year. So usually about swath timing is when you would be pulling stems, cutting stems, and looking for not just blackleg lesions in the stem, but also potentially verticillium discoloration. So they can look very similar. So if you are in Saskatchewan, take advantage of that program. They have added testing, so free testing for verticillium stripe and free testing for clubroot and for blackleg. These are diseases that, especially clubroot, I know there's sort of, stigma around it or whatever, but really you need to know whether or not you have it, because you cannot manage what you don't know is there. And pretending like it's not there isn't going to help anyone either. Okay, as mentioned earlier in the show, but just quickly, the Canadian Grain Commission is planning to harmonize the test weight standard between primary elevators and elevators at export. And so we'll keep you apprised of whether or not that change will in fact go forward, as we heard from Brett Halstead earlier. Sticking around the West, Alberta Grains is the new name of the Amalgamated Alberta Wheat and Barley Commissions. So this amalgamation has been, of course, in the works for a long time. Both the Wheat and Barley Commissions had been sharing staff, office space, and now these farmer-directed organizations are going to merge, and they will have a new name as of August 1 and that's, of course, the new crop year. And the name is Alberta Grains. There is a new logo. So check that out. You can head on over to RealAgriculture.com. Go check out the label. Go check out the details. But nice to know we'll have a new name for Alberta Wheat and Barley Commissions, because honestly, it was a long title. And everyone who was there had to use both. So this simplifies things. So as someone who has to write these things down or introduce these people, I thank you. Okay, thinking globally, of course, if you haven't heard, the Black Sea deal that Turkey actually brokered between Russia, Ukraine, and it allowed for, so the Black Sea deal allowed for the movement of grain out of Odessa, out of ports, out of Ukraine, so that Ukraine could actually be sending its own agriculture products to largely developing nations through the UN food program. That Black Sea deal was extended in May, another 60 days. However, there were signs that the deal may be set to expire when just a few weeks ago, end of June, the port movement had pretty much gone down to a trickle. And now Russia has officially pulled out of the deal, says absolutely they are not going to make any assurances as to the safety of vessels moving, so Ukrainian vessels moving, and not agree to the joint inspections that were happening before. So there certainly is some discussion on what impact this might have longer term on the wheat market and other global markets as well. Immediately after the news, there was a rally in the wheat prices, but most of the gains were lost yesterday on the particular day. Did briefly speak to Chuck Penner with Left Field Commodity Research, and he speculated that probably this was a bit of the, buy the rumor, sell the fact kind of model, in that much of the uncertainty around this was probably already baked in, and it's why we're not necessarily seeing the volatility that perhaps we've seen with the Russia's war on Ukraine and the impact of it on the market. So certainly something we're keeping an eye on, absolutely. Okay, there's a new executive director at the Grain Growers of Canada. So Kyle Larkin has been named as the new executive director. So that's exciting for Kyle. Congratulations. That, of course, the Grain Growers has been through a bit of a shift in personnel there. And so there was an interim executive director. Tyler Bjornson was stepping in the meantime, after Aaron Garlick had moved over to the Canada Grains Council. And so, yes, so there you go. So Tyler will transition out of his role at the Grain Growers of Canada, but he's got lots of other things on the go. So I'm sure he's looking forward to a few less things on his plate. All right. Okay. That's most of the news I have today. Oh my gosh, there is so much going on. I want to, because I've still got a bit of time on today's show, I'm going to now just throw to a clip of last night's episode of The Agronomist. But I want to make note that this is The Agronomist goes 8 p.m. Monday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern. You can find it on realagriculture.com/agronomists. As soon as it goes live, that player goes live. You can find it on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook as well at the same time. But last night's show is definitely one you want to watch because there's lots to see versus just hear. But I am going to pull a clip. We talked about non-traditional weed control. So weed zappers, weed lasers, robots that actually hand pick weeds. There's some really cool stuff. And so Chuck Baresich and Kim Brown Livingston joined me on The Agronomist last night for this just a fascinating topic on not just, what's out there, but why this is such an important thing. Kim, I'll start with you. So based in Manitoba, where are we at with tough to kill, perhaps multi-herbicide resistant weeds? Are we winning this war?
No, no, not at all. We're doing better than a lot of other places in the world, but we have been struggling with resistant weeds for a very long time. I was in university back in the 90s when the first resistant wild oats were found. And it was, how could this be? And I remember being at University of Manitoba in the hallways and listening to the buzz that was going on when this was actually discovered. And, I think at the time we thought, well, we'll fix this, it will go away. And that has not happened. It's gotten worse and worse and worse. And we are definitely dealing with now, not just herbicide resistant weeds, but MHR weeds. So multiple herbicide resistant weeds. So now you're seeing the MHR there more so than just HR weeds. And we're dealing with so many different weeds now. So I think we are lucky we don't have it quite as bad as other places do, but we still have enough on our plates and we're watching because we know we've got some new introductions that are just going to make our lives that much more difficult.
Mm-hmm. Chuck, you shared just before we went live here that you're from that lucky corner of the world that gets all the new nasty things. So whereabouts are you based? And tell me more about all the new terrible things you end up with.
Well, so we're down in southwestern Ontario. We're kind of, if people are unfamiliar with the area, we're sort of halfway between London and Chatham. And our soil type is sandy, like a sandy loam soil. And so everything just grows really, really well. Plus we get lots of rain and lots of moisture. And I think, in this area, obviously things started with the triazine resistant weeds. And I'm going to use some terminology here, Kim, that if I misquote it, you can reach through the radio and smack me. But I'm not a weed scientist, but we're farmers and we own a grain elevator and crop input supply company. So, we started with your group 2 resistant, when Roundup Ready soybeans were invented, this area went 110% Roundup Ready and everything. And so then we had Roundup Ready giant ragweed, and we were one of the first areas to get Canada fleabane. People were saying, what is this weird weed that won't die? And then when dicamba soybeans came out, this area was 100% dicamba tolerant soybeans. And then it was dicamba. We are one of the first areas of Ontario to have water hemp. Our weed specialist, she carries a little coffee mug on it that has a picture of a Palmer amaranth, I think, on it, which I really don't want that. But we're very cognizant of this. And one of the reasons why we get it is, I think, cropping choices, but also we have equipment coming up from the United States. And that is improperly cleaned. And so there's all kinds of surprises coming out of the back of those machines.
So I love that we can blame someone else. Although, I mean, I say it in jest, but Kim, often these weeds do travel in some form or fashion. So we know that, yes, equipment is one of the ways these weeds can be introduced to an area. What are some of the other ways that we are concerned about new species or new species already herbicide resistant showing up in, say, Manitoba, where you are?
Right. And that's a really good point. We know we've done some of this to ourselves. We definitely have homegrown resistance. We did that. Right. We're all nodding. I mean, you can just see my picture, but I'm nodding. Everything Chuck was saying, I'm nodding. And, and the cup from Kristen, that's from me because I have a matching one in Manitoba. It says water hemp coming it's water hemp coming to a field near you.
Oh, it is water hemp.
Yes.
Coming to a field near you. Great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. On a Yeti mug.
We've already got it.
Lovely.
We've already got it.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
So it's really tough. So, but something like water hemp is something that is not native to Manitoba. We don't have it. And actually in Manitoba, it's a tier 1 noxious weed. So under our Provincial Noxious Weeds Act, it has to be eradicated. So these weeds, when we find them, have to go. So these are our weeds that, would cause the most destruction and, devastation to our farmlands and our wildlands and our, that type of thing. So like our parks and even all that type of stuff. But something like a water hemp, we don't have it here at all. So when it does come in, we know it's coming in equipment. We know it could be coming in even in trucks that are bringing grain back and forth across the border. Right. We know those pigweed seeds are so tiny, they hide anywhere. We also know it's coming up in waterfowl, in the digestive tract of birds. They're basically eating it down south and dropping it off up north. So we know it's coming here. We know it's coming in floodwaters. It's a very small seed. It'll float, and we are finding it where the drains are backing up onto the corners of the fields or wherever there's drainage ditches and that water is backing up and anything coming from the south, because we know how polluted basically most of the United States is now with water hemp and palmer. So we do know we're getting these weeds in a lot of ways that we just can't stop. So then when they do get here, we have to try to do what we can to not let them, get a foot in the door, or they get a foot in the door. We have to kick them out. So that's what we're trying to do when we find these weeds. But it's a really tough battle. They can come in so many different ways.
Yeah. And ways that, exactly as you mentioned, so whether it's waterfowl or water, these are, we can't stop this, right? So we have to deal with what we're given. Something like equipment, okay, we have some control over potentially bringing in, cleaned equipment, or once we get it, where do we clean it? What do we do with it? But some of these things are completely out of our control. So we do have to recognize what these weeds are. So Chuck, to this point, so I mean, in your area, you have been battling either very naughty weeds or herbicide resistant, or I love this new term, Kim, MHR, multiple herbicide resistant weeds. How has that sort of informed your interest and your move towards introducing things like robotics into the weed control picture?
Well, there's two reasons why we're interested in this. And the first is going to be overall effectiveness of herbicides. I don't see chemical companies lining up to make new chemistry to a consumer base that doesn't really like them. So there just isn't a lot of new chemistry coming. And, and farmers, as a farmer, like, nothing is really easier than spraying. So, we really like spraying. Like, it's easy, it's simple, you can do lots of acres. We've had good success in the past, but that really isn't that viable. And what's happening in Ontario is we're seeing more and more vegetables being grown, other crops than corn and soybeans. And so the herbicides that might be able to kill some of these noxious weeds, you can't use in carrots and onions and those kinds of crops. So, kind of looking forward into the future, if we're going to have resistant weeds, which we know we're going to have, and we know that we likely won't have good chemical options to control them, as a farmer and a business owner, we're sitting here saying, well, what are my options? What can I do? Do I use electricity? Do I use flame burners, cultivation? What options are there? And that's where we started looking at some robotic technology as an alternative to simply using herbicides.
All right, and with that, we round out the show. Thank you so much to Corteva and to Corteva's Viatude fungicide for sponsoring today's show. Everyone who is at Ag in Motion, have a wonderful time. Stay dry and or wear sunscreen because it is that time of year. I will be back actually for Thursday's show for the Farmer Rapid Fire and again on Friday for the Issues panel. We'll talk to you then. Cheers.